this is Jean from Enhanced Prep, and today we want to talk about APs. So as we all know, AP courses are a great way to showcase our academic rigor and get college credit at the same time. However, the first 2 weeks of May often end up being a very stressful time of year because of the AP end of course examinations, especially if a student is taking more than one AP course and exam. In this short video, we'll cover some exam basics and study plan do's and don'ts that could make you feel more prepared for the AP testing season. So let's talk about the basics. What do we need to know about these tests? Let's cover the format first. These exams are typically 2 to 3 hours long with minimal breaks. This will likely be the longest test you have ever taken in high school outside of the ACT or SAT. So therefore, endurance matters. The exams are typically given during the school day in back-to-back sessions over a period of approximately 2 weeks. For example, on Monday morning from 8 to 12, that might be dedicated to AP English language. And then Monday afternoon from 12:30 to 4, that might be for AP Calculus BC. That means that each day may have a similar schedule like this, and it also might mean that you have some long testing days depending on which APs you are taking. Otherwise, it also might mean that you have a few days in between to prep for your next exam. So what are the pros and cons of such an aggressive schedule? Well, one of the cons could be that it can be exhausting, especially if you're testing back-to-back days. That can feel really tiring to anyone. These tests are also very strictly regulated, so it can feel even longer than your typical finals week. Oftentimes, there's a lot of pomp and circumstance. You have to sit there quietly, you have to form a single file line, that you have to get your ID checked. There's a lot of procedure involved with these tests that maybe aren't involved with other normal midterms or chapter tests in your regular school life. But there are some benefits too, so what are the pros? Well, this type of schedule often reflects those at universities and colleges. So you are getting actually a valuable practice to how to prepare for this kind of academic rigor in the future as well. Okay. Another fun fact about this is that the tests are always given at the same local time throughout the country. So this means that someone who's taking AP Physics in New York is going to take it on the same day as someone in California. However, they will be given at their same local time. So for example, if you're the New Yorker, you will be taking it at 8 a.m. Eastern, and in California, you'd be taking it at 8 a.m. Pacific. This really helps to prevent anybody from kind of sharing answers or test content across the United States. But it is also nice because then you get to say, hey, I took it on the same day as my friend over there in Michigan. And you do actually have some camaraderie there as well. Finally, the test exams are a mixed format, which means that they do include both multiple choice as well as a free response section, and that's across all different subjects. So do be prepared to not only fill in bubbles, but also to kind of turn on your brain and have to respond freely as well. How are these tests scored? That's another big question mark, right? Especially since why are we putting ourselves through this? There are definitely some benefits. So firstly, the multiple choice section is always scored by a computer. It's just literally scanning a Scantron. And that translates to a raw multiple choice score. Okay. So that's pretty straightforward, pretty basic, nothing out of the ordinary. On the other hand, you have the free response section. This is typically scored by 2 AP graders who are generally college professors or select AP teachers that are considered to be at the top at their prime. This is done during an AP reading period in a singular event at the beginning of June. So they kind of all get together and have a big AP reading party, if you will. Okay. The multiple choice and free response scores are then put together, totaled, and transposed into a scaled score of 1 through 5. So by the time we see our score, it's always 1 through 5. As long as you get a 3, which is considered a passing score, you might be eligible to have that used for college credit and to fulfill some of your general education courses when you do get to your dream school. A 5 is the top score and really shows strong mastery of the material. And a 1 is considered the lowest scoring that you could get. Okay. The scores do tend to be available around late June or early July, depending on the test. Some do take longer to grade than others. And then in addition to that, again, like I said, you could use this for college credit. However, I always recommend all of my students to check with the program that they are most interested in, because it really is up to their discretion what kind of scores they want to accept in replace of your college courses, or if they'll accept them at all. So for example, some schools may not accept your AP classes. If, let's say, you want to major in mathematics, they won't take your AP calculus. They'll want you to continue to take that course or take a placement exam with them in order to pass out of that. Okay, so make sure to do your research. And then you can always check the College Board website, AP Central, for more specific information on any of the AP courses and their corresponding exams. They will vary a little bit just based on their subject matter. You might also find some general review material there as well. I highly recommend it, but I wouldn't rely solely on that because they are meant to be brief guides or overviews rather than a comprehensive review of all of the topics and questions that could come up on the test. So this brings us to our second topic. We now know what the test is about, but how can we prep for it? So what are some of the best practices that I've seen over the years working with my students as they prepare for their APs? Well, I've noticed a few common mistakes and I've noticed a few best practices. So we'll kind of put those into two separate categories here. First, we'll review the common mistakes that a lot of people make, and then we'll talk about how to find, the best practices that help make my students successful in these exams and still kind of keep their inner zen without losing their minds. So common mistake number 1 is waiting till you have learned all of the material in class before reviewing for the AP test. This is probably the number 1 mistake I've seen a lot of students make, right? Realistically, there's just too much material in an AP course that oftentimes AP teachers are covering that through instruction almost all the way up to the test sometimes, or even beyond. Sometimes courses are so jam-packed full of knowledge that your class might not even be able to cover all of the material. If I put it this way, right? If we think about AP US history, each year the course adds another year of material. Therefore, if you have a younger sibling who's maybe 5 years younger, they will have to add an entire whole new presidential election to their learning. How can you keep up? So don't wait till the end, till you've had all of the material in order to start reviewing. You just simply won't have enough time. Common mistake number 2. I don't need to review the recently learned items that I just covered in class in April because I remember those things. Okay, oftentimes more recent material is more familiar. However, a large part of the AP exam is to see how you can intermix that recent material with older material on the test instead of compartmentalizing it. It's not usually just about remembering the most recent things, but also relating them to the rest of the course and achieving a deeper understanding of. Common mistake number 3. My class tests and lecture notes are all I need to study in order to get a 5 on this test. This is typically not true. I love our teachers. It's not our teachers' fault. I'm a classroom teacher. It's just not typically true, okay? They are doing their best to prepare you for this test, but the reality is that part of their job is also to check for understanding throughout the year, which means that their test may be geared to calibrate your understanding of fundamental knowledge rather than testing it like an AP, okay? The AB test, on the other hand, is created to differentiate you from the rest of your peers. So instead of writing to test your knowledge, it's really writing to see, hey, where's the cream that's rising to the top? So what gives you an edge over your classmate to be a little bit better on that bell curve? Okay. Additionally, some of the best practice for the AP test is to practice all course material together, because that is how they will appear on the test. This is contrary to what we see in classrooms, right? Classrooms, we are structuring material intentionally in units in order to help with scaffolding of learning. However, on the AP test, it's really trying to meld everything together to see if you have a mastery over the entire course. So best practice number 1, start reviewing early. This is the complete opposite of the common mistake, right? But really, this is the key to everything. Start reviewing early. I typically recommend that my students start their overall review in January or February. It doesn't have to be very intense. We're not cramming, but we are reviewing material from August and September while learning new material from the second half of the course. So not only are we already starting our review so that we're learning, relearning things there, but we're also starting to interlace new information into it. And that will actually make the AP exam feel a lot less jarring once you get there. Best practice number 2. If you are taking multiple APs, which I'm sure a lot of you are, create a consistent schedule that cycles through the different subjects. This will help avoid burnout. Okay, so for example, maybe Mondays are dedicated to AP Physics, and Wednesdays can be dedicated to AP Human Geography. This keeps stress to a minimum because it will give you set times to focus on each subject without getting overwhelmed with having to prep for multiple tests. Best practice number 3, take practice tests. Okay, a lot of these are available on the AP Central website. I'm sure that your teacher also has resources as well. And of course, we're happy to help you here as well. But endurance will matter a lot on this test, okay? Being able to shift gears between multiple choice and the free response sections will also be a helpful skill to practice before test day. As you get closer to the test day, make sure you are working in more practice tests or test sections with more frequency. This will help build momentum going into the test so that you're feeling like, hey, I'm running a mile and then I'm running 2. Great, I'm ready for a marathon, right? You're not just going from day 1 to a marathon. Another way to think about it is, if you are a musician with a big gig coming up, would you want the audience to see all of your dress rehearsals and sound checks? Probably not. But those are required for a great show. So think of your practice tests in the same type of way. All right, that's it for today. Happy studying, and tune in for our next episode from Enhanced Prep by Study.com. Thanks.